Hey, how's it going? It's Lee Halliday, and we're going to be learning today about the Web Speech API that's built into modern browsers, and this is the app we're going to be building. If you've ever used DuoLingo to practice a language or learn one, you've probably come across the game where it gives you a whole bunch of words that are a mix of two languages, and you have to match them up. So here I've got English and Spanish words, and when I click over it, so let's click on
I'm beautiful.
I'm beautiful, you got to find the match for that. So the match for that is
Soy hermoso. Nice
Soy
one.
hermoso. And then it gives me a little bit of motivation. So silla is a chair.
Chair.
Nice one.
Thank you very much, etc. If you get one wrong,
El restaurante.
A potato.
Not quite.
and it gives you some discouragement. But what you can do here is you can switch the accent. So we'll go with Daniel and Paulina.
The bank.
The bank.
Una papa.
Not
Una
quite.
papa. So anyways, that's what we're going to be building. You can click reset. And I've already deployed this up to Vercel, but we're going to switch over to my local environment where we have to build this whole thing out from scratch. And the cool part about this app, yes, we're learning about the Web Speech API, but we're going to be covering a lot of different React hooks, basically some data manipulation, searching through arrays, through objects, and it's going to be a good video overall, I hope. Anyways, if you haven't subscribed yet, please slam that subscribe button. I'm trying to make React videos, JavaScript videos, tutorials, and pump them out once a week, and hopefully they help you. So if we pull up the app, this is a Next.js application, and I've already set up sort of the page. So I'm visiting /n/es. This is a dynamic route. If I were to go back to the homepage, I actually have it in both Spanish and French. Show you on the real app. So we were looking at the Spanish one. You can also look over on the French one, and you can match up like
To work.
with travailler.
Travailler.
Impressive.
Thank you very much. Again, that's kind. Anyways, we're not going to be covering the Next.js app. Basically, though, what it is doing, it is loading some data that I've set up in this API page. So here's where I've got sort of the Spanish pairs and then the French pairs. So our page is loading this data, and then it's passing all of that on to a game component. And that's what we're going to be working inside of here. So here's our game component. We are receiving the pairs. So that would be this stuff here. So it's an array of arrays where each here contains two items, sort of the English and its Spanish counterpart. And we're also receiving some info about the two languages we're working with. So language A, which is English, and language B, which is Spanish. So that's all we'll be looking at in Next.js. The point isn't to cover that. The point is to learn about the Web Speech API. And I've written down the steps we have to do to cover this because there's quite a few of them. So this video will probably take, I would say, half an hour to complete, but you'll end up with a pretty cool app at the end of it. So the first thing we need to do is we've received the pairs, and why don't we console.log them just to take a look at what they look like. So let's open up our console, refresh that. Oh, yeah, I have to be on the page. There we go. So we've got our array of arrays, and what we need though is we need to flatten this out. We need to, instead of, 6 of them, we need to have 12 of them of one element each. So we're going to use a hook called useEffect that will basically parse those out, flatten them into a single array, and then put that into state. So the state we'll be working with, we will store this in choices and set choices. And we'll just set this up, use state. Let's start as an empty array. And then React.useEffect, we will run an effect anytime the pairs passed to us change. They're never going to change in this case, but it'll just run once, which is sort of what we want. So inside of this, we can go over the pairs. So we'll store them in an array called all for now, and we can map them. And I'll show you a better way in 1 second. So we're going to be mapping them, and we will receive some data. So what are we receiving? We're receiving basically pair side A and side B. So let's call this value A and value B here, like that. And what I want to do is convert this into a little bit more structured content that associates sort of the bank, store that one's English, and then store that el banco is Spanish. So we will do the lang for the value A would be the lang A dot code. So the code is this right here. And then we'll store the value, which will be value A. And we'll have another one of these for the French counterpart or Spanish counterpart. So that would be lang B, whatever the other language is, dot code, and then its value, value B. So if I console.log this, I haven't really solved the problem yet. I've still got an array of arrays, except now each one isn't just the value. It's an object that has the language and that value. So what we need to do is call flat on that. So what flat does is it basically takes that array of arrays and it smushes it out into a single flattened array. So now we have all of the values here. But this is a sort of an ineffective way of doing it because it has to map them all once and then go over them again to flatten them. So whenever you're mapping then flattening, there is a better way called the flat map. Just change that. So reload, and it does the exact same thing, except what it does is it flattens as it goes, so it only ever has to iterate over the array one time. So now that I've got them all, it probably wouldn't be good to have the English and the Spanish right beside each other because that would be a really easy game. So why don't we sort of randomize them? So I'm going to put this into a variable called sorted, and we will sort these. But we want to sort them in a random way. So what we can do is a little trick using math.random and subtract 0.5 from that. Whenever you use the custom sort, typically you're given two values and you have to return like 1 if it's greater than the value, 0 if they're the same, -1 if it's less than. And JavaScript uses that to place them in the right order. But by randomizing it and then subtracting, which gives you a number between 0 and 1, and then subtracting half of 1, 0.5, it will put them in a random order. So if I take a look at the sorted now, they should be in a random order. So we've got una papa, then el restaurante, then the bank, then soy hermoso, etc. So why don't we then take this sorted flattened array and place it up in our choices? So set choices, and it will be the sorted value. So now that we've got that in our state, let's come down and render that state out. So I've already set up like a bit of a skeleton, and what we're going to be doing is mapping over the choices. So we've got our choice, and we will be producing an li. And we always need a key whenever we're mapping. So why don't we set up our key to be the choice language dash the choice value. So that would be like es, el banco, whatever, en, the bank. And in here, we are going to be putting a button. So our value, we'll just put choice.value and make sure that it's actually working. Sweet. So now we have them showing up. They don't do anything yet, but that's half the battle. Okay, so the next step in my handy list is convert pairs to choices, done. Display the choices, done. Speak the choice. So now we're going to get into the actual web speech API. So what I am going to do is add an onClick event to the button. And when this is done, we are going to call a function that doesn't yet exist called choose. And we'll pass the choice that we're choosing up to that function. So we're going to do all this inline in one big component. So I'll just put this below and I'll create our choose function. So choose receives a choice. And the first thing we want to do is read that choice out loud. So in order to do that, we need to set a couple things up. The first thing we need to set up is, I forget what it's called. I was going to call this the synth_ref, and that is equal to react.useRef window.speech synthesis. So it's an instance of speech synthesis, which is a built-in JavaScript object that comes in the browser that's part of the web speech API. This is the thing that actually speaks a phrase or an utterance that they call it out. So by putting it into a ref, it will sort of set it up one time, and then I'll just always use the same instance of that. And with this set up, I can come back down into choice and work on reading it out loud. So the first thing you need to do is you need to create a new instance of this thing called an utter. It utters something, it speaks it. Utter. Okay. And this will be a new instance of the speech synthesis utterance. And what do you pass to this? You pass the text that you want it to read out loud. So that would be our choice.value. So with our instance of speech synthesis utterance, we can now use this synth_ref that we set up here. So synth_ref will access the current reference, and we call a function called speak, and we pass in our utterance, just like that. So if I come back here,
Una papa.
Una papa.
I'm beautiful.
I'm beautiful.
El restaurante.
El restaurante. So notice that it's not speaking it in a Spanish accent, it's just reading it in an English accent.
Silla.
Silla should be silla or silla. We'll get to that later, but for now, it's at least reading it out loud. The next step that we're going to do is we are going to save the current choice into some state so that when you pick the second choice, we can compare those and make sure that there's a match. So let's set current, and that will be react.useState, which is null at the beginning because there's no current selection. So why don't we, in our choose function, set current to be, actually, let's put the if statement. So we have to handle two cases, basically the first of the pairs and the second. So we'll determine which one that is, first or second, by checking if there's something in the current. And if there's not something. So this would be the first time, this would be the second. And the second time is when we want to basically take those two values and see if there's a match. But the first time, all we really want to do is set the current into a variable. Like that. And because it's very hard to sort of see which one has been selected, what we are going to do is come and add a class to the button if the choice as it's mapping over them is the current one. So we'll class name. So we're going to check is if there's a current and the current value is equal to the choice value. If that's true, we'll add selected, otherwise nothing, just like that. Okay, so now when I click it,
Silla. El restaurante.
all right, I must be doing something wrong.
Silla.
Silla. Set current. Oh, it's because I passed in current. I want to do the choice. Refresh this.
The restaurant.
There we go. So now you can see that it's green. And
A potato.
when you click the second one, now that's when we want to check to see if there is a match. So that's what we'll do inside of this part of the if statement. Let's create a new function. We'll call it isMatch. And we will pass in, let's just say choice A and choice B. Okay. And what it's going to do is look through, or actually let's call it value A and value B, like that. So what it's going to do is iterate over all of the pairs and check if value A and value B are in the same pair of phrases or words that we have. So we're going to do pairs, and we'll use a built-in array function called sum that basically will turn true if any one of them is a match. Because there is only ever going to be one match, and we don't care. We just, whenever you find the first one, that's what we care about, and sum will tell us that. So what sum gives us access to is, well, it calls a function, and we are given the pair. So we can split that out into pair A and pair B. And now we need to check, this is going to get a little bit hairy, we need to check if value A is equal to pair A and value B is equal to pair B, or the opposite. Because it's not guaranteed that you're going to choose English first and then Spanish. You might do the opposite. So we'll add an or and we'll cross them now. Value A is equal to pair B and value B is equal to pair A. Save it and let prettier do its thing. So when I call this function with value A and value B, it will look through all the pairs, check if there's a match by using sum, and it will have this matching A and A, B and B, or cross. So we'll come back to our choose function, and what we want to do is basically check if there's a match. So we will call isMatch, and we'll pass in, we need value A and value B, so we'll do current value for our A side. That's the one you'd done previously, the first one. And choice.value, which is the second one. And then we'll handle either a match or mismatch, like that. Okay, so what do we want to do with a match or a mismatch? Let's handle mismatch first. Actually, either way, match or mismatch, we want to get rid of our current value, so that the user can pick a new set of pairs. But we need a way to keep track of which pairs have already been matched and which ones haven't. And to do that, because if you look at the real game, once you do a match,
Una papa.
potato.
You did
you
it.
can see how they're disabled and you can't click them anymore. So we need to keep track of which ones have been selected. And if it's a match, we'll keep them selected. And if it's not a match, we will unselect them so that you can re-choose them in another pair. So to do that, we are going to add more state. So we'll call this selected and set selected. And we are going to keep track of this in an object. And what our object is going to look like is sort of like this. Una papa, so the value or the phrase, and then it will be true. Sorry, that's Ruby. And then a potato will be true as well. So we'll be adding the different phrases into this selected, and if it's not a match, we'll basically set this back to false so that you can re-choose it. Okay, so when you pick your first pair, we are going to place that into the selected object. So we'll say set selected, and what we can do is pass in whatever was in there before, plus the new one that they just chose. So that would be choice.value as the key and true as the value, just like that. And then we need to also do the same inside of whether there's a match or a mismatch. So if there's a match, we will basically do this same thing, but on our second choice, make it true. If it's a mismatch, what we're going to do is we're going to take the first one, the current, and set it back to false like that. So basically, when the first time you click it, so there's no current, it sets it to true. The second one you pick, if that's a match, it will set the second one to true as well. If it's not a match, it will unset the first one. So you can pick it again. So let's try this.
A potato.
Potato, let's find the match.
Una papa.
Okay, it didn't seem to work. So-
Cow. Scylla.
Oh, you know what? It may be working. I don't have React tools in here, but what we can do is look at our selected. Cool, so I was storing it in here, I just wasn't doing anything with it. So you can see in here a potato is true and a papa is true, but a cow is false because I got it wrong, so it unset it. So that was actually working. All I need to do though is use that selected to set the disabled field on our button. So there's two options in here. So we'll look up selected and we'll see if the choice that as we're iterating over is in here. So choice.value like that. So you can see that it did this. It found them in here, so they were true, so it disabled them. Disabled wants a Boolean though, and if our value is not yet in our selected object, it would get null, which is falsy, but what we can do is just do this double bang trick to basically convert it to its opposite and then back to the way it was, but in the process it will convert it into a Boolean. Nice little trick. So we can come back and we can see that it's disabling them as expected. So if I do cow and vaca, because there's a match, it disables both of them. If I do
I'm beautiful. Chair.
with a chair, they're not a match, so it sets that selected back to false so that you can re-pick it. Let's see where we are on the handy list of save current choice, done, check for match. We wrote the isMatch function. Record selected choices so that we can remember which have been picked in the past. That's been done. Get voices and split by language. So you'll notice that it was reading the English fine, but it was reading the Spanish in an English accent. Whereas if you look at the real one, we've got all sorts of different accents to choose from for each language. That's what we're going to do now. We need to get sort of a list of all the voices or accents we can choose from, split them into English and French, and then allow the user, us, to pick which one we want it to read our phrases with as you click on them. So there's going to be a bunch more state that we have to add to keep track of this. So we are going to keep track of the, what did I want to call this? The lang A voices, set lang A voices. So that would be, language A would be English in this case, and that will be an empty array. We need to keep track of the lang B voices, so that would be Spanish in this case. State. And then we need to keep track of which one in both language A and language B is currently selected. So we need two more pieces of state. Lang A voice, set lang A voice. Use state, it will start off as null. And we'll just copy that for our B. Okay, now that we've got all of this state set up, what we need to do is load all the different voices and split them up by language. So we're going to be using another useEffect hook that's going to run once on mount, I guess you could say. So after the very first render of this game component. That's what the empty brackets means. And I've noticed that when you're loading voices, sometimes if you load it like immediately, the browser's like not yet ready to give you them, so you get none. So just to get around that, we're going to use a set timeout to basically delay this thing by, say, doesn't need to be much, like 100 milliseconds. So the first thing we're going to do is grab the voices. So const voices is equal to, we'll use our synth-ref that we set up before, and then there's a function called getVoices. So if we console.log those out, we can take a look at what they look like. Okay, so there's a big array here, but each one is an instance of speech synthesis voice, and it gives us the name, so Alex, and it tells us which language it's for. So what we can do with the name and the language is basically split them out into English and Spanish ones. Cool, that's fine. So let's do it first for language A. So just call it voices A. So we'll take all the voices, we will filter them. So we'll take the voice and we need to check if this voice is matching language A. So what we can do is access the, the lang of the voice. But we only want the first two characters, so Italian here, whatever EL is, EN for English here, so we would want this Moira one. So what we'll do is we'll just substring, start at character 0, grab 2, and we'll compare these two characters with our language A.code. So if we do that and look at them, voices A, refresh. Now we're down to 14. So there's 14 English voices. There's a bunch of like Google ones and they're really long. So just for fun, why don't we filter those out so that we don't have any of those Google UK English female in there. It's more fun when you don't know what they're going to sound like and you're like, give me Rishi, give me Tessa. So we'll just filter those out. So get voices. We will filter, and we want voices where it's not the name includes Google. I think that works. Refresh. So now we went from 14 to 11. So here are the 11 English voices that we want. Okay. So let's put them into state now, and then we'll do language B for Spanish. So we'll just say set lang A voices to be voices A. And why don't we just pre-select one of them for the pre-selected one, and then the user can change it later. So set lang A voice, and we could just grab the first one, right? Voices A at 0. Sorry, A here. But I imported this little random function that I created that will just pick a random element from the array. So just to have fun, we will random grab one of the A voices. Okay. So with the A done, why don't we just duplicate this for the second language, B? Wonder if I can SB lang B. Oh, this one too. B. Okay, so I think I've got all of my state in here for the voices. Why don't we display the what are they called? The voices now. So I've got two ULs here, so we'll just do lang A voices.map. So we're going over a voice, and we are producing an LI. That will give it the key, and that will just be the name of the voice. And in here, we'll have a button that will also be the name of the voice. And on click is how we allow the user to change this. So when that happens, we'll just say set lang A voice to be whatever voice you're on as you're iterating over it. So if I save this, there we go. So here's all the English ones. I'm going to add one more LI at the beginning. that basically says lange.name so that we know that these are for English and not the Spanish ones. And we'll do the second one for the second set of voices now. So just copy and paste this down. Cool, let's see if I can do find and replace. There we go. So we got Alex, all the English ones, all the Spanish ones here. And it's not highlighting the selected one, so I need to remember to go add that selected class to our button. So class name is equal to, if the lang a voice if its name is equal to the one that I'm iterating over, we'll say selected, otherwise not. So there we go. So it had randomly chosen Victoria here, and we just got to do the same for the second set of voices. So come down here and paste that in. Make sure to switch it up to B. And there we go. We got Paulina and Moira. So every time we refresh this, oh boy. Okay. So that's an issue. Basically, it had re-rendered so fast. I think I know what happened. We set all the voices, and then we afterwards set the first voice that we're going to choose. It had re-rendered between these two function calls somehow. So it didn't have a lang a voice. So all we need to do is basically check, is there a lang a voice? Lang a voice. And is its name equal to the voice that we're going over? That should solve that. And do the same for B. Refresh. There we go. So every time you refresh, you'll get a different person. It's still not using them yet though.
Scylla.
It's still Scylla. So what we need to do is, prior to reading out sort of that utterance that we created, we can set utter.voice, and we can set it equal to the language A or the language B voice. So what we'll do is we will check, is this choice, is the lang equal to lang A code? If it is, we will use the lang A voice. Otherwise, we'll assume it's lang B voice. Like that. Refresh, and hopefully it's working now.
A potato.
A potato.
Soy hermoso.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm beautiful.
I'm beautiful.
Soy hermoso.
Soy hermoso. Okay, we're almost there. The only last thing I wanted to do, I believe, two more things actually. Create a reset function. That will be very simple. So let's just quickly create this. Const reset is a function that when called sets the current back to null, and it sets the selected back to an empty object. So we just need to call this from a button. So go down to the bottom, just add a button. This is reset. On click, it calls reset, and to style it, I think I added a class called reset. There we go, reset. Click that, it sets everything back to the way it was at the beginning. So the last thing I wanted to do, just as like a bonus, was add a little bit of encouragement or discouragement when you get it wrong. And it will read you that encouragement out loud. Okay, so we'll create two functions. Encourage. And then we'll copy it for the discourage. So what I'm going to do is just set up a few phrases. So let's say, good job, go get 'em, you're the best, like that. And we'll just copy this code that we used here, so a new instance of the synthesis utterance. And what we want to do is just randomly choose one of these three words. So use our old random function, grab one of them, and then use our synth_ref to read it out loud. And when do we want to encourage? We want to encourage when there is a match. So,
El banco.
el banco.
The bank.
You're the best.
Okay, I feel good. Now I can keep going. So now it's time for some discouragement. We'll just change this to discourage. Nope. Oops. Try again. So that's some good discouragement, and we'll make sure to discourage our users. So come back here.
Chair.
Chair.
A potato.
Nope.
All right. Now it's telling me when I get it wrong. Cool. So that's the video. I don't know, no clue how long it took us to get this done, but what we covered is basically using the web speech API built into the browser to work on utterances, basically phrases that are read out loud. And we also looked at different voices, different accents that you can apply to that utterance prior to it being read so that you can get the proper accent. Just to go over two more things that we're not really going to look into. On the utter, why don't we actually do it on the encourage? So you can modify the utter a little bit. You can change its pitch. So you can have it higher pitch or lower pitch. So let's say encouragement is higher. I think 1 is normal, so 2 would be double. And you can also change its rate. So you can make it be read quicker. You can also change its language. So by default, it will use whatever language is configured in the browser or in the lang tag on the HTML, or the lang attribute on the HTML tag. But you can override it. So I think let's try Italian and see what it sounds like. So we need to get it right because it's in the encourage. So the bank. And el banco, where is it?
El banco.
You made the best.
Okay, I have no clue what it said. Let's try one more time.
A potato.
A potato.
Una papa.
Good job.
Good job. Good job. Okay, anyways, that's it. You can play around with it. Give it a try. I'll link to the deployed version up here. I'll also link to the source code, and you can poke around the Next.js part as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.